Let me start with advertising budgets and sort of taking the long view of where you think they have been and where they will evolve to as we go through 2021.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that at the start of the pandemic, many of our clients, naturally sort of slammed on the brakes and did cut their spending. But I think as we saw, we went through the year, clients moved from that sort of period to sort of react much more to recovery and renewal. And actually in the third quarter, we saw budgets with half of our top 30 clients grow and half of them decline. In our capital markets day back in December, we said we thought our net sales for 2020 would be down around 8.4%, which I think is a much more resilient performance than many people would have expected, given the economic shock and the typical impact on ad budget. Certainly better than it was in 2009. And looking ahead, I think that clients are planning to increase spend, really quite substantially. Group M, our media planning and buying company, expects ad budgets in 2021 to be up around 12%. And that's driven by many of the companies looking to get back in the market, working with, for instance, cruise lines, getting people back onto cruise ships. I think that the advertising budget has really been driven by three things. What I call streaming, gaming, and shopping. And we've seen e-commerce budgets in 2020 grow as much as 25-30% as companies look to spend money in digital media. So clearly, a lot of the growth is going to be in digital media this year and next, but I think we expect a pretty broad-based recovery across all media types in 2021.
Where do you see, in terms of regions, Mark, where do you see the strongest recoveries? What are the outlier regions?
Look, I think that the recovery is going to be pretty much true on a global basis. When we look at China, where we have around 10,000 people at WPP, business has been recovering, really since the middle of the year. I was talking to our team in India, and actually India has seen, a good recovery already in, August, September, October, particularly with the IPL coming back online, and that's expected to continue. And here in the UK, we do expect to see one of the strongest rebounds in 2021, given the depth of the drop in 2020. In the US, as ever, is a particularly resilient market. So geographically, I think the rebound is going to be, pretty strong across the board. One of the big differences I think of the last 2 years has been the strength, particularly in packaged goods companies. In many ways, they benefited from a lot of the trends in COVID. Restocking and people, doing more grocery shopping. With a lot of healthcare and technology clients, and clearly they're benefiting. One of the strains of the pandemic, sadly, is the impact on small businesses, and on whom the economic shock has been felt more greatly, I would say. And WPP, to some extent, is in a fortunate position. We tend to work with many of the larger companies in the world.
And given what we've seen in markets over the last 12 months or so, Mark, are you homing in on any acquisitions? I know WPP has been very acquisitive in the past, and you have a different strategy, perhaps. Some analysts were suggesting recently you had to shrink in order to grow. So what is your sort of restructuring/acquisition strategy at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we've been shrinking. I mean, what we've really been doing is really trying to refocus the company, simplify the business, and really integrate our analog and digital operations. And, through the Kantar transaction, we actually came into the pandemic in a pretty strong position financially. And that does give us opportunities. And we are looking at investing in the areas of marketing technology, in e-commerce. And we're currently working with 8 of our top 10 clients on e-commerce. And that's a really major opportunity for us at WPP, as all companies figure out, how to compete with Amazon, how to get their products directly in the hands of consumers. And that really applies, across all sectors and areas. And then a lot of work we're doing, in the areas of data and data technologies as clients try to figure out how to use the data that they own and activate that through their media programs.
How difficult is it, Mark, to get good pricing if you have Facebook and Google working together on that front? Where can you go in this, what looks like oligopoly of digital advertising?
I think, from our clients' perspective, these businesses are driven by auctions. And so for us, scale doesn't come from volume anymore of media spend. It comes really from insights into data. and the performance of these platforms. So we work really to help clients, gain an advantage over the platforms, really by knowing more about their customers than the platforms do, and that's clearly not easy given the amount of data that the platforms has. But that's one way in which we can help our clients really benefit. I think it's true that greater choice is better for competition, and we do see a number of advertising platforms growing. Amazon is one of the fastest growing advertising platforms. Clearly TikTok around the world has been growing very, very rapidly during the pandemic. Now, it has other challenges from a political perspective, and we'll see in the technology companies' earnings this week that their power, I expect, we'll see very strong results, and we'll see that their relative power has grown, and that will naturally raise questions about, what should be done about that.
Yes, indeed, and a lot of people asking those questions around regulation, Mark. In the UK, in post-Brexit UK, I know that the Prime Minister has been consulting business on where we should see regulations dialed back a little bit, perhaps. I wonder if you have made any suggestions or have anything in mind. I mean, GDPR clearly was something that changed the online advertising world just a little bit. Is that somewhere you would like to see changes?
Well, I think that consumer privacy is very important, actually, and many of the changes through GDPR probably are, in the long run, the right thing to do as we work out how to do it. So I'm not sure the issue is to sort of scale back regulation. I mean, the reality is here in the UK we do have fantastic industries. The media industry, global players like WPP, really strong companies in TV production. Global players in the music business, pharmaceuticals. Look at the impact AstraZeneca has had, on the vaccine. Financial services. So I think we do have very many strong industries in the UK, and I would be looking really to how we can, accelerate the growth in those industries, and how we can get behind, many of the trends that are taking place in the economy. The move to a low carbon economy, the growth in e-commerce. I mean, in many ways, the UK is actually a world leader in e-commerce, and it's to some extent somewhat frustrating to read of the sort of Brexit regulation and how that's impacting, the friction in trade is impacting many e-commerce retailers hoping to export to Europe. So there are things that need to be done, but I'm optimistic about the future for the UK economy if we can get behind, many of the sectors that we have that are growing strongly.
Mark, one of my favorite things to do in London, if I'm there with any free time at all, is go to the Natural History Museum. And you work closely with the Natural History Museum. How do these organizations cope under lockdown? I mean, how difficult a time is it for an organization like the Natural History Museum?
It's not easy, but actually I think, all of us have learned, haven't we, to connect digitally. I mean, the last year, and other people have observed this, has shown an explosion in innovation. People figuring out ways to transact and ways to trade. Look at the growth. I've got a list of 80 different restaurants in the UK by email in London doing restaurant kits that you can cook at home. And at Natural History Museum, it's been no different. They spent many years figuring out how to get their visitors to give them their email addresses. And one of the advantages of advanced reservations was that everyone gave them their email address. And now they have the most amazing contact list of which to build relationships. Many schools are looking for natural history content. And I think that, when these organizations come back, many of the issues that they address around climate change and the environment and biodiversity clearly are going to be more important. I think people are going to be thinking a little bit more about what matters in their life, and great institutions like that can really help educate and broaden people's minds.